Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel remains hopeful in the face of UNESCO'S controversial resolution. We'll reveal why thousands of Israelis are flocking to the Western Wall, and Israeli researchers find a way to fight the effects of global warming. I'm Natasha Kirchak, here with the latest news in Israel. Israelis and their friends around the world today are condemning the UNESCO resolution on Jerusalem that only acknowledges a Muslim connection to the city while ignoring Jewish and Christian ties. The Israeli envoy to the UN Cultural Agency says that even though the motion has passed, there are still some positive gestures that can help Israel stay hopeful. Israel's ambassador to UNESCO, Carmel Shama-Hacohen, points out that in the end, Mexico refused to support the measure, even though its envoy was fired for rebelling against his government's initial yes vote. Hacohen says he believes the incident marks the beginning of the dismantlement of the automatic majority enjoyed by the Palestinians and Arab states at the world body for so long. He's also praising Brazil for expressing reservations over the wording of the draft, arguing that this signals Brazilia's willingness to reject similar measures in the future. Most of Israel's allies view the resolution as simply the latest expression of anti-Semitism and deeply rooted bias against a Jewish state at the United Nations, where Israel is far outnumbered by Arab countries and their sympathizers.
We will not negotiate and we won't take a part in this ugly game. This game, there is no place for those games here in UNESCO. This Nobel organization was established to preserve the history, not to rewrite it. And the Palestinians and the Arab countries want to rewrite the history of Jerusalem. And we don't need any approval, not from the Palestinians, with all due respect, and even not from the executive board. The history link between the Jewish people and Jerusalem is so strong that nobody on earth can break it. Thank you.
Even UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the Director General of UNESCO have distanced themselves from the resolution and are stressing the multi-faith nature of Jerusalem. Both the Palestinian Authority and the Hamas terror organization, however, predictably celebrated the UNESCO vote as a victory for their cause. It has now been 5 years since IDF soldier Gilad Shalit was freed by his Hamas captors in exchange for over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. And today, Hamas is marking the anniversary with an ominous warning. The spokesperson of the terrorists' military wing, Abu Obaida, announced that the world is going to be surprised by something the Palestinian group has been saving for the next prisoner swap with Israel. He went on to declare the Jewish state will be forced to pay a compulsory price. The last official update on a prospective exchange was issued by Israel's chief negotiator Lior Lotan last month. He said Hamas rejected the offer of 18 Palestinian prisoners and 19 bodies, seized during the 2014 conflict in Gaza, all in exchange for 2 Israeli civilians and the remains of 2 IDF soldiers believed to have been killed in fighting. According to Lotan, Hamas has insisted that the swap include Palestinians who aren't from Gaza and weren't involved in Operation Protective Edge. In the past, they've also demanded the release of all terrorists who were previously released in the 2011 Shalit deal but were rearrested in the meantime for reoffending. On the surface, diplomatic relations between Switzerland and Israel may seem fine, but behind the scenes, that's not necessarily the case. That's at least the view of pro-Israel Swiss activist Hans-Peter Bucci, who sat down with ILTV's Steve Leibowitz to talk about how Swiss media is responsible for the bias against Israel.
The majority, I suppose, is more emotionally against Israel because of the media. If you hear for decades about the Israelis stealing land, settlements, the bad language, and our government has forgotten what it has signed in 1922 with the mandate for Palestine. They forgot all about that. They speak about giving half of Jerusalem to the Palestinians. They speak of the West Bank forgetting that it is Judea Samaria. Personally, I have a big problem with our government. And our government finances about 40 NGOs which are favoring BDS against Israel, that's something wrong. But officially, Israel, they're friends of us officially, but behind the scene, it's not very pleasant.
Do you have a feeling that the Swiss population and even the Swiss government has forgotten history?
I think so. They have forgotten, the world has forgotten the legal rights it has given to the Jewish people. They forgot about it. And the main problem in my eyes is that there is no basic knowledge in anybody how Israel became into being. So most of the people, I cannot blame them that they think perhaps it was the Holocaust or the partition plan or so. They have no idea. So they have no basic knowledge to judge whether what's coming in through the media, whether it's right or wrong.
When the people in Switzerland see all of the attacks by fanatic Islamic jihadists that are taking place even in Europe, does that not raise sympathy for Israel?
I think some people are perhaps changing a little bit the mind, but you think when you see the headlines, first always it says 2 Palestinians shot, and then very small because they attacked Israeli, and they always bring, for example, 30 Israeli dead and 150 Palestinian dead. They never speak of the number of the hundreds of injured people and of the hundred of attacks. People do not get the whole dimension, and some people even say, oh, these poor Palestinians, it's the only way to defend, and they do not hear what Abbas is telling them to do.
Our government is always talking about the importance of public information, of hasbara, as we call it in Hebrew. Do you get much assistance from Israeli officials?
We had a good friend at the embassy. He helped us. He really saw the point. We need facts. The others may lie, but we cannot afford to just say something. But there are often points where we think we should get concrete help, concrete facts. We have some friends helping us, but we could need more help.
Well, I hope you understand that we in Israel very much appreciate the kind of help that you give to us and comfort us. And I want to thank you very much for being with us today on ILTV.
May I say something?
Sure.
You know, we are Christian, we are believers, and it's wonderful how Israel came into being. The prophet said, the Lord will bring you back, and here you are. But he also organized a legal basis for Israel. And it hurts us that the world is violating, singling out Israel. There will be a judgment finally, but we don't like it what happens. We are ashamed sometimes of our nation, of our government, and our churches.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your feelings with us.
3 people have been lately injured in a series of rock-throwing attacks in Jerusalem that took place yesterday evening. In one incident, an Israeli car came under attack in the neighborhood of Atul, leaving 2 of its passengers injured. Security forces have arrested both a 19-year-old East Jerusalem resident and a 15-year-old Atul resident, who police claim were seen throwing rocks at traveling cars. In a second attack at the Lions Gate entrance of Jerusalem's Old City, one person sustained light injuries after being hit by stones. Security forces have not yet identified the attacker. These latest attacks come as Israeli forces are boosting security in fear of rising violence during the Jewish holiday season. Earlier this week, 10 Palestinian miners were arrested for throwing rocks and bottles throughout the West Bank. Anonymous harassment has long been an issue, especially in the world of the web and social media. And now the Anti-Defamation League has just released a startling report about just how imbalanced that harassment is, especially towards the Jewish people. ILTV's Aaron Porras has more on the story.
With a focus on Twitter, the Anti-Defamation League set out at the beginning of August 2015 to record the upward trend of anti-Semitic harassment. Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO and national director of the ADL, said that the ADL commissioned the report after a series of journalists complained about receiving more and more bigoted messages. According to the report, over 2.6 million anti-Semitic tweets were made over the last year, with a total reach of roughly 10 billion people. Of the total 2.6 million tweets, 19,253 were directed specifically at journalists, 2/3 of which originated from only 1,600 accounts. Further inquiry found that while over 800 different journalists were targeted, 83%, or 15,952 of the above-mentioned tweets, were aimed at only 10 individuals. Oren Segal, who is the director of the ADL Center on Extremism, explained that the process to compile the data centered around searching for keywords known to be related to anti-Semitic hate speech. He continued to explain that the process revealed a relatively small network of users carrying out the bigoted attacks. While some attribute the rise in anti-Semitic attitudes to the recent election, the ADL explicitly states that its findings do not imply that Donald Trump or the Republican Party endorse hate speech. There was, however, a number of correlations between the tweets found in the search and other unexpected keywords. Among the keywords found were Trump, nationalist, conservative, American, and white. The report goes on to state that 2 specific individuals who were already banned from Twitter were inciting many of the attacks: Andrew Anglin, founder of the white supremacist website The Daily Stormer, and Lee Rogers, who runs the neo-Nazi website InfoStormer. A Twitter spokesperson issued a statement saying, quote, "We don't believe these numbers are accurate, but we take the issue very seriously," end quote. Twitter has disabled and deleted just over 20% of the offending accounts.
With all the recent backlash against presidential hopeful Donald Trump, some people argue that his chances of sitting in the Oval Office are drifting away. Tonight we'll be witnessing the presidential candidates go head-to-head again in yet another debate. But here in Israel, polls are showing that the vast majority of Israelis already support Clinton. Joining us today is Nimrod Zuta. He's a founder of the Israeli Trump White and Blue social media organization, which is fighting to get more American Israelis to vote for Trump. Thanks so much for coming in.
Hey, thanks.
So let's talk about the debate. Let's begin this interview about the debate. What can we expect from Donald Trump?
Well, I think we're going to be seeing the climax of what we saw so far about the presidential debates. We're going to see Trump at its finest, probably in the form that we've seen him already in the primary debates. We know that he brought the mother of one of the victims of the Benghazi attacks to sit in the among the crowd. We're going to see, I think, a remarkable performance by Donald Trump. That I can say that.
All right, so let's turn to Israel. You know, Trump has shown support for Israel consistently, but there's also been a lot of media coverage about his lack of knowledge about the Middle East as a whole. He was on the Hewitt show and he couldn't identify the difference between Hezbollah and Hamas, just as a minor example. Now, how can Israelis truly depend on Trump to support Israel given his lack of experience in foreign policy? Or is that not an issue at all?
Well, first of all, he has an experience. He is a fantastically successful businessman, and this obviously lets you, the amount of experience that you get from trading with 100+ countries in the world is much better than any senator, any foreign minister that you can name, okay? Because his namesake is on it. He built an empire. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton destroyed empires. She destroyed America's foreign relations. She's threatening to go to an all-out war with Russia over some email hack, okay?
Well, what are some of the specific policies that Trump, you know, is advocating for here in Israel?
Well, first of all, because of Donald Trump's advocacy, the Republican Party, for the first time in over 2 decades, has completely rejected from its platform the mentioning of a Palestinian state, okay, which is a big change. It's an historic change. This is only because of the intervention of Mr. Trump. His advisors are really, he has advisors that are that learned in yeshivas in Judea and Samaria. His right hand is an Orthodox Jew, and this is the best candidate by far for the Israeli interests that the American politics has ever had, period.
Now, let's talk about another issue. We're going to move slightly away from Israel and talk about refugees and the status of refugees. America has always been a country of refugees, including many Jews themselves who came to the country after World War II and
Legally.
previous. Okay. Now, Trump has made threats to keep out Mexicans, impose restrictions on Muslim refugees. Will this change the great American tradition, in your opinion? And what do you say to Jews themselves who were refugees at one point or have family members who are refugees and are concerned about this type of divisive policy?
I would like to say to the American Jewish voters specifically that you have to abandon the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is no longer our home. In the last Democratic Convention, we saw the Israeli flag was being burned outside of the convention. We saw inside more Palestinian flags than American flags. This is not a party that a Jew can allow himself to be identified with, all right? And right now there is an attempt to change the fabric of America, to change the Judeo-Christian fabric of America, the historically Judeo-Christian, which established this country, made it the most powerful country in the world, that made the Constitution one of the most important documents in history. And they're trying to import voters. You know, let's be honest, those illegals that come illegally to the United States and bringing all the amounts of crimes that we see with them, they're going to vote Democrat. Let's be honest about it. And if they would have voted Republican, Hillary Clinton would be the first one to say, get them the hell out, you know? She would be the first.
Now, a poll just came out here in Israel indicating that more than 2/3 of the Israeli public prefer Clinton to Trump. Now, you're fighting to get more Israeli Americans to vote for Trump. What indications do you have as far as how many people will vote for Trump here?
First of all, everyone who knows a thing or two about the Israeli public, this poll is bogus, okay? This is completely, people do not prefer Clinton. She's one of the most hated people in Israel currently, by far, okay? You just look at social media. And
well, these are polls that are coming out. I mean,
yeah, and the polls are colluded. They literally sleep in the same bed with the Clinton campaign. We know that the guy who makes the polls for NBC, for example, he's working for Clinton. This is the recent email leaks. He got $250,000 salary directly from the Clinton campaign. We know that all of the polls, they oversample Democrats versus Republicans. They ask way too many little independent guys. So we know they're rigged. The polls are rigged, and the emails themselves of John Podesta, he's admitting himself that their internal polls show that they're in panic.
So, but what are the indications do you have as far as how many people are going to end up voting for Trump from here in Israel?
My hope is that at least like in the last elections in 2012, and we know from the 2000 elections that they were decided only because of a difference of 500 votes in Florida, and we have about 10,000 American expatriates living in Israel who are Florida residents, all right? So we can do this without a doubt, you know?
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in.
All right,
and I guess
thanks.
we'll see what happens tonight.
All right.
This morning in Jerusalem was a busy one as thousands of Israelis flocked to the Western Wall to take part in the traditional biannual priestly blessing. Every year, male descendants of the Kohanic priestly caste gather to recite a benediction. While the prayer is usually performed on a daily basis by devout Jews at synagogues throughout Israel, mass blessings at the Western Wall usually take place during Passover and this week's Jewish holiday, Sukkot. Jews are not allowed to pray at the Temple Mount, although they are allowed to visit the holy site. As a result, many Jews travel to the Western Wall for the tradition because it's the closest spot to the Temple Mount where they can legally pray. Today, the country's two chief rabbis and the rabbi of the Western Wall received the crowds of worshippers at a large sukkah near the site. The temporary tent-like structure will be erected for the duration of the festival, as a reminder of the booths that the Israelites erected during the Exodus from Egypt, according to the Bible. On Sunday, Israeli Interior Minister Aryeh Deri called on all Israeli Jews to converge at the Western Wall, as a form of challenging the controversial resolution passed by UNESCO earlier this week.
I think the decision of UNESCO is disgusting and appalling. I think they need to learn about culture and history first before they can come with any kind of conclusion.
I think it's horrible. I think it's really unfair because our sources are from the Bible and from the most important book in the world. It's known that we are related to the West Wall.
The Temple Mount resolution was just ratified yesterday evening and has caused an uproar in Israel because it ignores Jewish ties to Jerusalem's holiest sites and exclusively refers to them by their Muslim names. More and more people around the world are becoming concerned about climate change and the risks that rising temperatures could pose to our food supply. Here in Israel, however, scientists are already making significant strides in developing heat-resistant produce. According to NASA, thermometers this past August soared to levels that were higher than any other time on record during that month. And as temperatures continue to climb, so do fears that ruined crops could one day lead to mass starvation. Israel's agricultural research organization has been working on a solution to the challenges faced by global farming for more than 10 years. And a team at the institute just announced a major breakthrough toward the creation of vegetation that isn't just able to withstand the heat, but actually thrive the hotter it gets. Their first big success has been with apricots by being able to identify a specific genetic mechanism in the tree that controls its sensitivity to heat. The Israeli team believes it will soon be possible to take that knowledge and apply it to other major agricultural crops that could one day mean the difference between life and death. Israeli television series have long been a big hit abroad too, from the hit series Homeland to The Greenhouse. All of these programs were created here in Israel and eventually sold to the global market, and now it looks like we can add Shtisel to that incredibly impressive list. Marta Kaufman is the co-creator of one of the most loved American sitcoms in history, the smash hit Friends. Now she wants to work her magic on this Israeli drama about an ultra-Orthodox Jewish family. The storyline from Shtisel will have to be moved from Jerusalem to a religious neighborhood in Brooklyn, of course, and the name will be changed to a more easily pronounced Emes. Kaufman says that after the resounding success of Friends, she really only wants to take on new projects that she's passionate about, and this program fits the bill. It involves universal themes such as unrequited love, extramarital attraction, and feelings of underachievement. The cast includes the family patriarch and Torah scholar Shulem, his strict wife Giti, and their son Akiva, who is an artist tempted by unattainable women. The American version of the show will be broadcast on Amazon Prime. Kaufman insists the program will offer an affectionate glimpse at a traditional Jewish family. And don't worry if you're not Jewish. The show will sprinkle in a little added explanation about the richness of Orthodox observance for the benefit of the non-Jewish audience. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say that the road to success is always under construction, so our word today is mutzlach, which means success in Hebrew. It's always nice to be complimented on the hard work you've done, so just head to Israel, where you commonly hear people saying phrases like "Eze yeled mutzlach," or "what a successful child," or "Eze atzlacha," which means "what a success." Just make sure not to be too loud about your mutzlach, because it's better to work hard in silence and let your success be your noise. But if you do want to win your Israeli friends over, congratulate them on their successes, whether they've made a delicious meal or have gotten a new job offer. It's easy to focus on the negative. After all, success is the sum of many repeated small efforts day in and day out. But if you stay positive and committed, you'll have something to celebrate at the end of the day, and maybe even an Israeli friend to compliment you with Eze atzlacha, or what a success. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
The weekend is just around the corner. Thursday should be sunny with a high of 81 degrees. Friday should be just as sunny, and the temperature should stay the same. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.83 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.